All right, welcome everyone. On July 25th, AUVSI Empire State Meeting. We have a couple of things to go over. The agenda today, we have a special guest that's going to be with us. His name is Jeff Clementi from Skybrowse. We'll get to him in a minute. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce everybody here to Jeff Clementi from Skybrowse. A little info on Jeff. Jeff Clementi is currently the VP of Business Development at Skybrowse, with a demonstrated history of working in the aviation and aerospace industry, as well as public safety, with years of experience in fire protection, fire management, public safety systems, structural firefighting, and fire investigations. What he'll cover in his talk tonight, he'll be discussing utilizing 3D mapping for emergency response, as well as a new innovation from Skybrowse called Universal Upload. Universal Upload allows you to make 3D models that are accurate down to the centimeter using video from any source. Pretty impressive, Jeff. I'd like to now introduce Jeff Clementi from Skybrowse, and please, my friend, take it over.
Thanks. Greatly appreciate the intro. Just first and foremost, this is not a Skybrowse sales pitch. It's none of that. More or less, this is my experiences in the UAS industry, how I got to where I'm at. A lot of that does revolve around what Skybrowse does and what it's capable of, as well as some of the use cases that we've used it for. But don't think I'm trying to sell Skybrowse, because that's absolutely not what this is about. So first and foremost, Jennifer, I was actually born and raised in Rochester 23 years. So I saw your profile there. But yeah, so I was born and raised in Rochester, moved to Tennessee.
That's awesome.
Been in Tennessee for 16 some odd years now. I've got 15 years in the fire service, volunteering, paid, the whole gambit. And then aside from that, I also work for a nonprofit. The nonprofit I work for is called Storm Point. It initially started out as disaster response to hurricanes, tornadoes, all of that kind of stuff. We've rapidly built up a fleet of aircrafts that are not typically available to public safety. At least when we started, they were not available. Obviously, as time progresses, more and more agencies are getting higher end aircrafts. That being said, 3 or 4 years ago, we had, 4 Matrice 210s. We had, the latest and greatest. We had 28 sets of batteries for a Matrice. We've got M30s. We've got a whole gambit of aircrafts that we do disaster response with. So as far as Storm Point goes, we kind of molded that into we took several different avenues. We had a whole bunch of equipment. Obviously, it's not hurricane season every month of the year. So rather than let that equipment sit dormant, we put it to use in Rutherford County and in Middle Tennessee. So now we actually run calls with local law enforcement, with fire department. We're in CAD, so we get dispatched when the fire department gets dispatched. We get dispatched when law enforcement gets dispatched. So we get paged out just like a volunteer fire department would. So that leads me into my Skybrowse endeavors. I met Bobby Oyang almost 3 years ago at a conference, got to talking about what we do with Storm Point. He initially didn't believe a word I was saying. He's like, there is no way people do this stuff for free. You are not going down to hurricanes and doing search and rescue and not getting paid to do it. There's just no way. But he got to looking into it a little bit. We had several long conversations, at which point he offered Skybrowse, the license of Skybrowse, to Storm Point for free. And that was just over 2 years ago. Let's see here. I'm going to share. Can everyone see my screen?
Yep. We see it.
Okay. So Bobby offered us a license, and we used it a ton. We used it for everything. So to get into our very first use case, here's the normal Skybrowse page. Here's the login. I map tons and tons of stuff. I've got tens of thousands of maps and models. But this was my very first Skybrowse for an actual incident. Obviously, I played with it before that. We made 3D models of the swing set in the backyard, stuff like that. That being said, tornado touchdown, Pelham, Alabama. We had a friend that was down in Alabama at the time, contact emergency management in Tennessee, who they reached out to us with Storm Point. We packed up the trailer, packed up all our gear, and drove to Pelham, Alabama. So we were initially tasked with mapping this one neighborhood. They didn't know what kind of damage they had. They just knew that it wasn't good. So I went up there with full intention of flying robots for 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, whatever it took. We had easily a couple $100,000 in aircrafts. We showed up. We mapped out the neighborhood that they asked us to map out. If you notice, this is a point cloud. At the time, Skybrowse did not have mesh. Everything was point cloud. So this was a 6-minute flight with Skybrowse. I was not working for Skybrowse at the time. So we went up there, and initially this data set, I think it's almost 20 acres, was collected in 6 minutes. Literally flew it in 6 minutes and had a data set to give over to IC, IC being incident command. So we sent them a link to this 3D model, and they were like, that's great. That's all we needed. Obviously, there was not any search and rescue going on at the time. They just needed damage assessment and needed to know what they had access to and what they didn't. And we were able to collect that data and actually give them a deliverable in under 30 minutes. 6 minutes to collect it, then upload it and process it super quick, sent them a link, and they had everything that they wanted. That being said, we then got chainsaws out and went to town for 3 days, clearing debris, cutting trees, all that fun stuff. So my trip to go fly robots for 3 days turned into 3 days with a chainsaw in hand. And that was primarily because of the efficacy, how efficient the drones were at doing what they needed to do. Incident command said, we need a map, and we were able to give them a map in literally no time whatsoever. So that was the first use case that we actually went through and used Skybrowse to map something out. Roll forward a little bit, Waverly, Tennessee. So these were widely used. This wasn't one guy using it. I think this was probably the first time that I realized the large scale value of 3D modeling. I've got several 3D models here I'll pull up, but so what happened in Waverly, they got 17 inches of rain in a matter of hours. It looked like a hurricane had hit. There were over 300 houses wiped off foundation. Yes, that's a car right there in the debris, but we did the same thing. So the difference here, I don't know if anyone knows Travis Potter or not, but we were sending these data sets to Travis with FEMA. They were sent to the National Weather Service. They were sent to a much broader range of people. This wasn't just one guy, incident command, getting this to make decisions. This was a much larger network. National Weather Service used it to actually figure out how high water levels were. They could measure from where the water was after the fact up to where the debris was in the trees. So National Weather Service used it. This was one of the first incidents in Tennessee that they actually used 3D models, video, and photos for the federal disaster declaration. Typically they send, I don't know if anyone knows how disasters work, but typically they send one person from the state. That one person from the state shows up and they're like, yep, this is bad. So they decide to send one person from the feds, and that one person from the feds shows up and they're like, yep, this is bad. But it usually takes a long time to get those boots on the ground. In Tennessee, this was the first time that the photos, the videos, the 3D models, not saying just the 3D models, but all of it, all of the drone footage they had, all the photographs they had, everything that they had, they were able to make a federal disaster declaration based off of the data sets that they had been given. And I attribute a lot of that to the drones. Yes, there were news agencies on foot. There were also news agencies with drones. We were flying, but these data sets made it all the way up to actually the president's desk. And I do mean that literally. Travis Potter called me. He's like, hey, just so you know, all of that whole folder of data you gave me is literally going across the president's desk at the moment. How do you want credit to be given to Storm Point? And it was just a matter of, you know, trade water market or whatever. We didn't care. We were like, do whatever you want to do. But it made it all the way up the food chain, the top. And we're talking about drone data sets. So this was not, I was not working for Skybrowse at the time. This was literally just a tool in the toolbox. The same thing could have been done with Drone Deploy. It could have been done with Pix4D. It could have been done with any of the other 3D mapping modeling stuff out there. I'm slightly partial to this, one, because I work there, but two, you can get anybody to fly it. You don't need any training whatsoever. You literally push a button and it'll map or 3D model. But I'll get into that in a moment. So we had several data sets from Waverly, everything from houses and foundations, and the data sets were invaluable in several different uses. So does anyone have any questions about those first two incidents before I move on to the next big cluster that we got ourselves into? We good? Okay. So this brings us to Kentucky. Now, mind you, we've flown dozens. The only ones that I'm talking about are the really big incidents, but dozens, if not hundreds of calls in between all of these large scale events. We are very good at large scale events because we do a lot of them. But that being said, what I'm displaying here is a small fraction of what we've actually used 3D maps and models for. So this model here, this was Kentucky. There was a 100-mile tornado that came through. I don't know if anyone remembers it, December 11th. I believe it was 2 years ago, or at least 2 Decembers ago. So this was done with a Matrice 210 at 200 or at 400 feet. This is almost 200 acres. This was done in a single flight. So we literally drew a box and said, this is what we want, pushed a button, drone takes off, flies a grid, comes back, we upload the data set or upload the video because Skybrowse does videogrammetry. We upload one video file and this was the data set that we got back. So almost 200 acres. The big lesson learned here, this was the largest area that I've ever covered as far as mapping goes for a disaster. This one model right here, we have 30 or 40 different models that we made every day. So over the total of the event, we had easily 100 models made. But the uses here even outweighed what the uses in Waverly did. So the drones here provided to be more invaluable than just about anything we'd ever worked. When we showed up, this was in Marshall County, Kentucky. Once again, they called Storm Point, said, hey, can you guys come out? And, you know, we do what we do. Absolutely, we'll be there. When we showed up, it was one of those cases where they literally had no idea what drones were capable of at all. So we showed up, went to incident command again. Went through the whole gamut. What do you need? Blah, 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 blah. And incident command literally looked at us and said, we don't know what we need. We just heard you had drones, and seeing as though we can't get to these areas, we figured it might be useful to be able to at least see what we've got. So yeah, this is one of many models that we made. As far as some of the uses go, so it's cool to make 3D models. It's cool to make cool videos, all of that fun stuff. But as far as emergency response goes, as far as public safety goes, if the data doesn't get to the people that are making the decisions, and if it doesn't get to them in the amount of time that they need to make those decisions, then the data is useless. So people make 3D models and videos, and several storm chasers are out there putting up videos on Facebook. Gravy, cool. I do a lot of disaster response. I like those videos too. Fact of the matter is they're not really benefiting anyone, not to the scale that this stuff is. So some of the uses for these 3D models, the big one being daily briefings. So we flew one of these models basically right before sun went down every day. So we would fly, we also flew throughout the day as well, but the big use as far as briefings go, They took these models, and every single morning in the briefs, they put these models up there, and they also gave access to all the emergency responders. When you have an incident this big, the firefighters, police officers, most of them in this area lost their homes. They are not the people that are responding to this disaster because they're dealing with their own disaster. So it was neighboring communities, neighboring counties, neighboring cities. We were all the way from Tennessee, neighboring states. Those are the people that are responding when you get a large scale incident to supplement the localized efforts. So you get those people that have never worked in this area. As far as knowing what streets are where, it's one thing trying to figure out where you're going when your GPS works. It's a whole nother thing when there's trees blocking half the roads you're trying to go on. Even after all of the search and rescue efforts, there's still people doing, tarping houses, boarding up windows, cleaning up trees. People are getting hurt doing that stuff. Ambulances were rolling nonstop 24/7. But being able to get where they needed to go and having up-to-date maps proved to be invaluable. They were able to pull up a map of an area and say, yeah, we can't go here, we can't go there, but we can get here. So that was just one of the uses. This was the first time the electric company used these maps to measure, at least the first time in my experience, as far as a disaster goes. They actually went through and they were measuring where their poles used to be to see if they had 10 feet easement on all sides to go reset the poles, basically measuring to see if they could get the machinery in to where they needed to get the machinery to reset utilities. So they were using the daily maps that we were giving Incident Command to figure that stuff out. Debris removal. They were using the maps to look, all right, well, there's a pile of stuff here that we need to remove. They were using, the stuff for debris removal, all the way to the point. So we have 3D maps from the very first day that are a little bit higher resolution than this. But what we didn't realize was after the incident was done and all of the big trucks that have come through, all of the bulldozers, the backhoes, the excavators, not only does the storm do damage, but all of that stuff also does damage. It damages roadways, it damages easements, it damages a bunch of stuff. But they had documentation of what the roads looked like after the storm, but before the reconstruction, which helped them as far as figuring out and calculating what to ask for as far as funding for roadways and all of that. And they were actually able to classify it as part of the cleanup efforts. The roadways weren't necessarily damaged by the storm, but they were from the cleanup. The National Guard used the maps. There's 30 some odd agencies that actually use these for one reason or another, whether it be to figure out how to get somewhere, whether it be to figure out where new poles needed to go, or whether to figure out debris cleanup, all of that. So we were basically mapping all day, every day, and then at night we would fly ISR. For anyone that doesn't know what ISR is, it's intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. Sadly, when disaster strikes, people come out of the woodwork and try to take advantage of that. And drones played a huge part in mitigating that, because we were able to cover a huge area to make sure people weren't looting, making sure people were not in houses that they should not have been in. A lot of stuff is condemned, and families wanted to go in and get their stuff. Being that it's condemned during the day, they were not allowed in, so they would try to sneak in at night. Yes, it's still their property, but no, they shouldn't be in there. So we were able to provide ISR to law enforcement all night as well. And all of that was volunteer. But the data sets are still being used today for several different things up in Marshall County. So to roll forward even further. Okay, well, this was Waverly, so this isn't much further. This was actually a previous call, but as you can see, house wiped off a foundation. It was kind of neat. They were actually able to pull measurements, and someone a whole lot smarter than me was able to calculate how many gallons of water it would take, or at least what they thought it would take to push that house off the foundation as far as it moved. So kind of an interesting use case there. But so moving forward. So this was about when the Mavic 3 Enterprise released. Shortly before this, we actually released Mesh. So you'll notice the point cloud. For anyone that doesn't know what Mesh is, It's more like a photorealistic 3D model. So we still have the point cloud to gather data. We can still pull measurements. We can annotate. We can do all of that stuff. We can mark, label, do whatever it is we need to do to let people know what it is we're trying to prove, disprove, or whatever that may be. So we have several tools. We've got annotate, we've got measure, we've got area. You can figure out angles. There's heat map tools, and there's some tactical tools in there. I'll talk about the tactical aspect in just a minute, but we simplified it. So with SkyBrowse, you don't have to know the aperture, you don't have to know shutter speed, you don't need to know overlap, you don't need, all of that stuff goes out the window. We let the aircraft do what the aircraft does best, and that's take video. So essentially there's apps for Autel, there's apps for DJI, and you push a button, it flies a circle around something or flies a grid, and it figures out all the overlap, all of the camera angles, everything for you. Records one video, it's videogrammetry, then you can upload it and process it to make a 3D model. And at this point, we were making photorealistic 3D models because we had mesh. So this was a demo that we did with a Mavic 3 Enterprise. This was done in a minute and a half. This was a minute and a half video that actually made this 3D model. This was actually at LIDA in Bend, Oregon, but made a 3D model that's accurate down to a centimeter. Kind of neat. We added mesh. So to roll forward a little bit, we recently released, this is probably the most exciting thing I've seen since working at SkyBrowse, but universal upload. So we had an app for DJI, we had an app for Autel, but unfortunately states like Florida, Tennessee just got hit hard with it. There's a huge push to move away from country of origin bans. I'm sure most people are familiar with them. Hold on 1/2 second, sorry. I'm actually down in Florida right now. Waiting for, I'm down here to speak at Drone Nerds Elevate, but our marketing manager just got to the hotel. So anyways, so as far as universal upload goes, this is more to meet that demand for other aircrafts. I don't know if anyone's ever seen an app put out for Skydio. You probably haven't, because they don't work with other people. They want to do everything in-house. So that made it really difficult for us to implement SkyBrowse on like a Skydio. And then you got stuff like a Lemur. You've got, there's 1,000 manufacturers out there. We wanted to work with all of them. So what we did is we released universal upload. And when I say it's universal upload, you can see that's a video of the moon. It's an 11-second video of the moon from a NASA space. It's literally a NASA satellite. And yes, on the NASA website, it says that it's public information and you're more than welcome to download it. But I took this video from the NASA satellite and processed it just to see what would happen with universal upload. And sure enough, I have an accurate, measurable to within a centimeter model of the moon. So obviously this isn't the full moon, but it does show how universal this is. So once my kids found out about this, they actually went through every single Harry Potter movie to find the best flyover of Hogwarts Castle to see if we could take a section of that movie. I don't know the legalities behind that, so we didn't actually do it, but I'm pretty sure you could take a flyover from Hogwarts and make a 3D model of Hogwarts Castle. So how does this affect public safety? Let's step forward a little bit. Several ways. Oh, this is actually, let me rewind because I thought this was kind of cool. This is one of those instances where, well, you can't fly drones here. So how are you going to make a 3D model if you can't fly drones? Well, universal upload. I was actually in South Dakota backpacking last week, and I had an opportunity to take a video of Mount Rushmore, so processed it and made a 3D model. That's what I call CGP. Is anyone familiar with CGP? No. CGP is cool guy points. I literally made a 3D model for the cool guy points associated with Mount Rushmore. But back to the universal upload and why it is beneficial to public safety and everybody else for that matter. This right here was one of our first 3D models made using universal upload. This was at Rex in Florida. So we have apps. This was actually with an Autel smart remote. Right now, people are starting to integrate with the Autel smart remote. That being said, at the time, it was almost impossible to develop for the Autel Smart Remote. So the Autel can fly circles. Here's a data set we got in 36 seconds of a motorcycle wreck, accurate down to within a centimeter. So using a tool that we would not have initially been able to use SkyBrowse with, now we can. Let's see. Ooh, minimizing. Bear with me, part of the Zoom thing is blocking my view here. Let's see. Okay, move that. So there's the moon, Mount Rushmore, motorcycle. All right, then there's the smaller stuff. We got a lot of, well, what happens if it happens under a bridge? Or what happens if it's somewhere that we can't fly a drone? And that happens a lot, right? So with universal upload, this is a Glock 43. It's the smallest Glock they make. I've got another one where the Glock is actually on the other side. But anyone that's familiar with this firearm, there's a chamber indicator on there. That chamber indicator literally sticks up 1/3 of a millimeter. It's not even 1 millimeter tall. You can feel it with your pointer finger, but you can barely even see the chamber indicator. I have a 3D model of this exact Glock where you can see in the 3D model, you can actually see that the chamber indicator is raised or not raised. I looked for it. I couldn't find it before this little demo, but I'm sure you can see the detail here. This was made in 30 seconds with a cell phone, uploaded from the cell phone, processed via AWS servers. So it's all CJIS compliant, FedRAMP compliant. It's the same thing the feds are using for their stuff. But this data set came back in less than 5 minutes. So in an evidentiary standpoint, we can now collect data sets that we weren't able to get before. It was nice being able to fly drones. It was awesome to be able to fly 200 acres with a 210 in one flight. Cool stuff, huge maps, everybody's doing it. This stuff, the niche stuff, the little stuff, to be able to do this at a forensic scale, I've got 3D models of a ruler that has millimeters on it. And there were somewhere between 20 and 30 dots between the millimeters. So that's the density we're talking about as far as point cloud goes. Some of that depends on what resolution camera you're shooting. That being said, everything nowadays shoots 4K. Everything now will shoot 1080p. 8K stuff comes out even better. This here was shot with 4K on my cell phone. And you can see every single detail of anything that you could possibly want to see from an evidentiary standpoint in a 3D model. So just really neat stuff. As far as ease of use goes, so my 7-year-old daughter, actually she's 9 now, she started using SkyBrowse when she was 7. I probably have 800 3D models of our swing set in the backyard because she can actually upload video on her Chromebook. It does not require a massive PC to process because it's all cloud processed. It's all processed on AWS servers in the US. So she has gone out with several of my drones, push a button, fly a circle, upload a video on a $99 Chromebook from Walmart. And now, my 11-year-old just got his first cell phone. He hasn't tried it yet because I have not introduced him to it yet, but I'm sure we'll have all sorts of 3D models as soon as he figures out that he can make 3D models with his cell phone as well. But that being said, this can still be done with Skydio, with Brink, with, any aircraft that's out there. Doesn't matter. I'm down here speaking at Elevate. There's some stuff that I cover in my presentation here that I don't think anyone else has addressed anywhere. But we can also 3D model underwater using underwater ROVs. So if it can take video, we can literally process it into a 3D model. So it opened up the door to a lot of different things. Ground robots, ground, sky, like I said, even space for that matter. So in a nutshell, that's that's what I was here to talk about. You know, the use cases that I found for 3D modeling. The other implementations are after the fact. So I'm just going to put this up here just so y'all have it if you want it. Made it with universal upload, but it's my business card. Figured I'd get the details out there if anyone wants it. But that being said, so aside from what we can do, cool, make 3D models, awesome. What I talked about earlier is the data is only useful if it gets to where it needs to go. So from here, we can make 3D models. We also made it so you can export 3D models. So you can export the LAZ file, which is a point cloud, very similar to LiDAR. Any app that uses or processes LiDAR data can also look at those 3D models. You can also export in OBJ, which is a 3D model format. If anybody's friends with me on Facebook, I know several are. If not, shoot me a friend request. I'm happy to entertain just about anything. But I've got some VR videos where I loaded the OBJ into VR on my VR headset. And it completely changes the training aspect of stuff. When you actually have an incident or anything for that matter, and you can set it on your desk in front of you and see it in 3D, the implementation there, the training aspect of what to do with a 3D model after the fact is invaluable. And then we can also export, there's PDF reports that'll do all the measurements for you. You click a couple buttons and it'll print out a PDF with just about all the data that you need for whether it be police reporting, you know, any of that kind of stuff. There's several different tools to get data sets where they need to go. So in a nutshell, that's Skybrowse, that's me. I'm happy to talk anything public safety, anything drone related, you know, happy to talk backpacking too. If you want to talk backpacking, I did that all last week as well. But yeah, I'm just, you know, give people a reason to fly. That's the whole reason I got into Skybrowse. Obviously, yes, we want to sell product. But when I talked to Bobby, when he first offered me a position, I told him flat out, my whole reason for taking this position was to give law enforcement another reason to fly, to give fire departments another reason to fly. And that's been my motivation all along. If we can prove ROI to get a police department more drones or to get a fire department more drones by proving that we can save time, money, effort, lives, then so be it. That's the motivation here behind Skybrowse. So anyone have any questions? I feel like I've been talking a lot and everyone else has been quiet.
I have a comment to make.
Sure.
I remember when I was in high school and we worked with SketchUp for Schools. It was like a three-dimensional platform where you like mapped things out, or you created like the designs for like different types of like it was like drones and other tools, but you had to know like the dimensions of each of it. And like I think it's very cool that Skybrowse, you just like upload a video and it makes it for you.
For sure.
That's very cool.
Skybrowse going into the facade inspection side. Is that what you guys are doing next? What's the next phase for you guys?
Honestly, people are using it for all sorts of stuff every day. Somebody made a 3D model of a whale in California for some sort of, I don't know what they actually used it for, but some sort of measurements on a whale. So yeah, there are absolutely people. I know somebody in Florida, one of the last hurricanes that came through, they used it to measure the big screen out the pool housing, the pool screened in porches. They used it to measure that stuff to know how much metal they had to order to replace. As far as facade, I don't know anyone that's done it yet, but I'm sure it's absolutely a possibility. Whether it be taking cell phone video or drone video, I'm sure it's possible. The other big push that I wanted to get into with you, Tony, as well as some other people that are influencers in STEM, was somehow getting the tello to record video while flying circles. I know Drone Blocks doesn't do it as of right now. For some reason, it won't record video while doing an autonomous circle. But kids would absolutely be able to make 3D models with 720p video and block code their own flight paths. that to me would be, you know, super impactful. And that's the kind of stuff that we'd be willing to just give kids to use. It's like, yes, absolutely, go use it. The company started, it was Bobby's college project. He was literally working on a college project, and that is what is now Skybrowse today. He got the patents with the professor that he was working on it with. So as far as education goes, Tony, you specifically, as far as the whole STEM thing goes, we would absolutely love to partner up and figure out how kids can get into making 3D models.
Let's do it next week, bro. Still got camps going on, like 10 of them. So, bro, I'll call you after
Awesome.
you get to Florida, bro. Seriously. So,
Absolutely.
all right, Brisky. It's a date.
I think it's just also a great reminder of how many people volunteer their time to make a difference. And that the level of generosity of, you know, just doing this and having the skill to do it. And, you know, just thinking of STEM and thinking of women in technology. I'm so excited to learn what your daughter ends up doing. And I am very hopeful that you can speak, you know, to women, to young girls in high school. Like, I really feel like you belong in, you know, this should be a high school program for sure.
So let's get down to price point. That's why I raised my hand. So what, you know, for the people who want to buy this, for schools, let's talk about, for STEM programs, you know, for professional drone pilots or service providers, you know, what, are there different price points? Are there, you know, for schools, for professionals, that sort of thing? Where do the price points lie, and how is that laid out to the potential customer?
Sure. So the set pricing right now is $3,000 per pilot. So $3,000 per year for one pilot, unlimited 3D models, unlimited storage, all of that. So we recently added an unlimited pilot package. There are a lot of smaller departments that don't need 10 pilots, but there are a lot of larger departments that do. So we added in an unlimited pilots package. It's just under $8,000, so $7,999. That being said, so Bobby donated the license to StormPoint and was more than willing to do that because, one, he knew the value it added to what we were doing, and honestly, we assess everything on a case-to-case basis. So our set pricing, yes, it's out there. If a department can afford $3,000 for a pilot, you know, if they can afford the software, then that's our pricing. There are several departments that are like, hey, we're a small county department. We want to use it with a neighboring department. Is there any way the two of us could split it? We've worked out those on case to case. As far as schools though, so you brought up schools. Schools are a whole different thing. I don't know if you saw, we launched freemium. So freemium is basically, you can make 3D models, you just can't pull measurements, you can't export the 3D models. You're limited as far as what you can do with a 3D model after the fact. But we do have freemium. So after a 2-week free trial, it basically rolls over into freemium. You can still fly the drone, you can still upload video, you can still make a 3D model. More for CGP, for the cool guy points. You can look at it, spin it around and say, yep, I made a 3D model. But as far as schools go, so we have never charged a school for a license. We have always worked with them to meet whatever need it is that they need. So now we obviously have some cost on the back end. So as far as storage of video and this, that, and the other. So what we've done in that sense is we were working on other avenues where not everything has to go through AWS. If it doesn't need that CGIS compliance, if it doesn't need that chain of custody, if it doesn't need the extra security stuff that law enforcement needs, we're working on a way to get it so we can offer stuff at a lower price point that doesn't necessarily have the CGIS compliance. It doesn't have FedRAMP. It doesn't have, you know, all of that whole aspect. That being said, so this was literally Bobby's college project. He got into a motorcycle wreck, couldn't get his motorcycle back because it took them like 4 hours to do the investigation. He was like, I could have done that in 4 minutes with a drone. Realized the business aspect of stuff there and turned his college project into a business. So when it comes to us working with colleges, he's been more than open to, You know, if you've got a class with 20 students, we'll give you 4 months to use it with those 20 students. If you're doing an annual thing, we'll give you a license for, you know, however many students you have to work on whatever it is they need to work on. So like I said, there's other softwares out there. There's, you know, Pix and Drone Deploy and all that. The big difference with SkyBrowse is it doesn't take 2 weeks to teach someone to use it. You can literally give it to them day one, and then they can get the data sets and they can use the actual data sets after the fact. And yeah, we've absolutely worked with colleges and educational institutes, and we've never charged a dime to any of them.
What do you attribute your software to when it comes to ease of use? Just what you pointed out between Pix4D and the rest of them. What makes yours different than, you know, the educational load up on those other products? What makes yours so simple?
For starters, so we started out public safety. I've got a fire background, Katie, our marketing manager, law enforcement background. Everybody with an exception of Bobby, it was Bobby's college project, but everybody that works for SkyBrowse has some sort of background in public safety. We also have thousands of law enforcement agencies that are using it, and developers that are willing to drop what they're doing on a whim to change stuff to make it easier. So we roll off of feedback. We get constant feedback from people that are using it every day. There's a lot of stuff in there that people have asked us about, volumetrics. They're like, can you do volumetrics? We can, but we've pulled it out because law enforcement didn't need it. We've pulled out several different tools and several different steps in the process, just because it started to clutter. If you add too many tools, it's too much. If you're not using it, then why is it there? So we've stripped out a lot of the tools that aren't necessary to do that specific job. It's focused on law enforcement. That being said, people are using it for lots of different stuff. But our initial drive was law enforcement. On the other end, video. So photography is a whole skill in and of itself. If somebody's going to do photogrammetry, their end product is the result of their photography knowledge. They need to know, you know, fixed aperture. They need to know setting your exposure, locking your exposure. There's a lot of different, they need to know overlaps. That you don't need to know that with video. If it looks good in the video, it's going to make a 3D model. We're fortunate having DJI and Autel and other great aircrafts out there that when you push a button, you get a good video. You don't necessarily need to be a professional videographer to fly around something and get a video to process. On top of that, the night aspect of stuff. So I don't know if anyone's ever taken like a Mavic Mini or a Phantom 4 or, you know, any of those. If you switch from Mavic Mini specifically, because we do a lot of interior ops, when you're in photo mode, the ability to capture light is a lot different than it is when you're in video. In video, you can capture video in a lot darker scenarios than you can photos, without getting motion blur. A lot of that has to do with pixel binning and some other stuff. But if you take a 12 megapixel sensor and shoot a 4K video with it, it actually uses multiple pixels to collect light as opposed to using one that it would use in a photo. So we work a lot better at night flights. We're a lot better as far as collecting data sets in low light conditions as well, just because the video quality is usually a lot better without the motion blur at night than say photos that have to slow down or stop. And then the actual collection. So drone can keep moving. Some of those 3D models I showed, the drone was literally flying as fast as it could possibly fly. Whereas photogrammetry, you'd have to slow down, take a picture, move, take a picture. And you don't necessarily have to do that with videogrammetry. So.
Are there any other questions out there? Anybody?
Wait, how successful have you guys been with the underwater approach wise? So you said you can map, right? So you guys are utilizing like buoys at the same time? Or are you guys pinpointing most of your, most of your data wise when you collect and map the surfaces underwater?
Yeah, so as far as underwater goes, we have a tool it's a scalability tool. So you have to have something of known measurement in the video, whether it be a ruler, whether it be a yardstick, whether it be whatever it may be. If you set something underwater that you know the measurement of, you can actually scale the model after the fact. which will give you those actual measurable measurements that are accurate. So on top of that, there's a lot that plays into underwater stuff. One, the deeper you go, the darker it gets. Video does better than photos in dark, so it's a little bit helpful there. But the other thing being water quality. So I have some great 3D models that I've made in my pool at home. And then I have some that didn't turn out so great because the water quality sucked. So there's absolutely stuff that plays into the quality of the 3D model. But yeah, I mean, you can do it with just about any video whatsoever.
Awesome sauce. Thanks a lot for that, bro. Appreciate you.
Yeah.
You guys support ground control for like when they, I don't know if that's something the public safety people need as much as others, but say they need to match to some other coordinate system.
So surprisingly, it's hit or miss. We do not use ground control points for anything. So all of our models are relative accuracy and not global accuracy. The difference being relative is from pixel to pixel, you can pull a measurement and it's accurate. But if you take that and put it on a map, it's not necessarily accurate. A lot of that has to do with the drone. So if we have telemetry data from the drone, the positioning of the model on a map is however far the error is from the drone, that's how far the error is going to be from where we're placed on a map. You could still add known measurements, and if you're going to bring it into AUVSI or bring it into somewhere else, you can align those in another app. You can't do it within the GUI of SkyBrowse though.
Jeff, has any of this been used in court for any testimony or anything?
Yeah, several. It's gone through court 12 times that I know of. It's never been challenged though. So not that we want it to be challenged. We've been really, really fortunate in the fact that we were able to build off of what others have done before us. We didn't necessarily reinvent the wheel. The way stuff is processed is different. We're using video instead of photos, it's different. But all of the trials and tribulations that the photogrammetry companies already went through to prove, you know, they were the Pix4D laid the groundwork for us. They have been challenged. So has, you know, several others. The fact that they have been challenged when we go to court, we've yet to have someone challenge the data. We have several white papers and studies that have been done that prove the accuracy and so on and so forth. But as far as a court case goes, data's been pushed through, it's been analyzed, it's been, you know, supported as far as the legal system goes. We've never actually had a DA or anyone else challenge it for that matter. But it has gone through several different cases.
Okay. That was a great presentation, Jeff. Very concise, very good. Good representative for the company. Get to the point, show what it can do, you know, and you're passionate about it. Shows that it really works and you really can help save lives and save property, et cetera, which is hats off to SkyBrowse and the people that you work with.
I appreciate it.
If you just put his contact information onto the chat. So if anybody wants to just, you know, grab that, call him directly, talk to him. I know we'll have more things to talk about, Jeff. There's no doubt about it.
For sure.
And it was funny. When you said underwater project, you know, I do the oyster seeding, and we have video from scuba divers that I might just send you a video.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it would be interesting
Absolutely.
to see what you come up with. So I'm gonna grab some of that video and send it to you, and just see what underwater shots would mean. You never know what Cornell Cooperative will come back with, because they're the ones.
Absolutely.
Right. So who knows what your next venture might be, but I would share that with them. So thank you. Very interesting product. Excellent.